Hey folks, welcome back to the Murray Homestead. Today we're going to be doing some chicken coop upgrades. Primarily, it's going to be a set of nesting boxes now that the hens are laying. And in order to do that, I need to build a new perch. Alrighty, so when I built this hoop house style chicken coop, I can do a video for y'all how I did that if y'all want, but it works really well. I built this really simple perch. And it gives them a ton of room to perch. But now that they're laying eggs, they're just laying randomly in the hay. And so we're losing eggs and they're not as clean because they're on the ground. So the solution is we need to build them a nesting box. So I'm going to be using 4x8 sheets of plywood. So the first thing I'm going to do is dismantle this perch, and I'm going to make a ladder style perch that goes on the back and leans against these two boards here, these two 2x4s. That way they still have plenty of room to perch, but then it's going to open this area up so I can put the nesting boxes here. These walls here are 2 feet tall, and generally you want your nesting boxes at least about 18 inches up off the ground. So I'm going to make them out of 4x8 sheets of plywood, and then I'll just screw them right here to these 2x4s. Let's see how long that distance is. See if I can fit an 8-foot 2x in there. I think this is going to be longer than 8 feet. Yeah, it's just over 8 feet. So I'll secure the nesting boxes on these two pieces here. And then I'll just lean that ladder style perch up here against this. So I'll take apart this old perch and make the new ladder one right quick. And then we'll get to the main part of the video, and that's going to be the nesting boxes for the hens. All right, so I took some quick measurements, and this by no means needs to be perfect, but because the width changes the higher up it goes because it's a dome, obviously. I'm gonna go about 6.5 feet high, and so I've just got a plain old 2x4x8, and I will cut that little bit off, and I'll lean them up against the back like that, and then I'll take some of these 2x2s that I have left over and make basically what looks like a ladder. So let me get these cut off right quick, and I'll see y'all inside in a minute. Safety squints. They work pretty well. In all seriousness, you should probably have on some safety glasses. Alrighty. And then I'm going to cut these 2x down to 6 feet long, and that will be the horizontal part of the ladder. Love you. All right, really quick design change. When you use these 2x2s, you can, for the most part, really only get one screw in there. And the problem I had with this one is, I think the term is racking strength, but because you only got one screw, the whole thing can shift like this very, very easily. So I've got an old scrap 2x4 that I'll put on the top, and I'll put one on the bottom. That way I can get 2 screws in there, and it'll be much more stable that way. So I'm going to pre-drill these holes because I have to put this together myself in there. And I'll pre-drill these out. And you want to make sure to do that on all your holes. That way when you do drive the screw, you don't split the 2x. They sell these at all the hardware stores. It's just a little countersink. So you got a tapered drill bit, and then you've got this cutting edge here that'll actually make it so that your screws will sit flush in the wood. I'll put this one on the description, but you can get these at the hardware store. They're $6-7. but they're definitely worth it for lots of different projects. Alrighty, I'm gonna take this in there and attempt to put it together without it falling apart. All right, I try to use as much leftovers around here on the homestead as we can. Thank goodness lumber prices have actually gone back down to, you know, not crazy high, but still, especially for projects like this, reusing stuff is good. So when I disassemble old things, I always save these screws because the screws are definitely not cheap. These are construction grade screws. You don't want to use drywall screws or anything like that. These are 2.5 inches long. A 2x4 is actually 1.5 by 3.5 for whatever magical reason. So you think you'd use 3-inch screws because it's 1.5 and plus 1.5 is 3. But for most applications, you actually want to use a 2.5 because by the time it gets in the wood, you don't want the sharp end sticking out the other side. Alrighty, so as y'all can see, this is super simple. These 3 perches here are 6 feet long, so we got 18 feet of perching space, and we got about 12.5 birds. So each one should have about a foot, and then they're staggered, so their rear ends will be facing away from each other, so they won't be, you know, dropping on each other. And then this takes up not very much square feet because we went more vertical with it, kind of like in a ladder. And so now we have all this room to walk in and out and all this room here to put the nesting boxes. Let me grab my tape measure here right quick. This bottom perch is almost exactly 2 feet off the ground. And the general rule of thumb is you want your lowest perch somewhere between 18 and 24 inches off the ground. I'm going to try to make the nesting boxes the bottom of the nesting box is 18 inches off the ground. And then I'm going to put a little ramp on the top that way they won't try to jump on there and perch on there. The nesting boxes are going to be approximately 12 by 12 by 12. That's a pretty general rule of thumb for most laying hens. The main thing is you want it big enough for them to be able to turn around in, but small enough that 2 don't try to get in the same nesting box. So I'll unload some plywood and we'll get going on that. All right, so we got the perch done. We're about to start working on the brooding box. Excuse me, not the brooding box, nesting box. What I got is some 3/4 sheathing or plywood. I use plywood, not OSB. It's much more weather resistant. You know, it might bow if it gets wet, but it's not gonna swell and fall apart. We are gonna paint these with some exterior paint. One cool little thing that I found out from YouTube, ironically, is this gator lift. This 3/4 ply is really nice because it's very strong. The prices went down a bunch. I only paid 32 bucks a sheet for this, where it used to be, you know, they were almost $75. At one point, they were over 100. But the prices went down, but they are rated as structural. So they're thick enough. I can actually screw this to a 2x4 or vice versa, and they're pretty strong. The downside is they're a little heavy. So what I like to do is set it down like this and tip it up on its side. And then you can grab this gator lift here and you just throw it about in the middle and pick up, and you can walk with the plywood much easier. Alrighty. So I'm gonna start cutting this down. We need 3 pieces that are 1 foot wide and 8 feet long. And that's gonna be the bottom, the back, and the top of the nesting boxes. And then with the rest of the plywood, I'll cut it little 1 by 1 sections, and that'll be the dividers that actually make the 1 by 1 by 1 cube. Alrighty, so we're gonna measure this out 1 foot lengths. Quick side note, if you noticed earlier in the chicken coop, I wasn't wearing gloves. I strongly advise wearing gloves when you're doing basically anything like this, moving around lumber. The fact of the matter is you can have really tough callous hands. That's really nice. But when I wear gloves, I don't worry about splinters or cuts or anything. And I can do it tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day, because I don't have to worry about my hands being all beat up. That being said, when I use power tools or I'm doing something nasty, I don't wear gloves because I can wash my hands. You cannot wash your gloves. And these are, 20 bucks a pop. So, side note over. All right, so I'm going to measure out 12 inches, 2 feet, and 3 feet. And I measure from this side down here. So I'll measure again from this side over here. Yep. Alrighty. So I'm using this just a skill saw to break down this plywood. And then the skill saw guide, I will 100% leave one of these in the description. They are not expensive. And I have in my, furniture wood shop an actual track saw. But that's a whole nother expense, and you don't necessarily need that for the majority of projects. So we're just using DeWalt skill saw and this skill saw guide. So I marked 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot. Because I'm using this guide, the distance between the edge of this guard and the blade is 1.5 inches. And that's pretty standard for most skill saws. So I'm going to measure out 1.5 inches here. And 1.5 inches here away from my original line. And I'll line this guard up with that. All right. That moved a bit. All right, that's pretty close. Because I'm not on a flat surface, my horses aren't super flat. So just to give myself a little bit of extra assurance, I'll clamp this end down. And if you can see here, I've got a piece of sacrificial foam board here. So what that's going to let me do is lower the blade on the skill saw just beyond this 3/4 and cut into this foam just a little bit. And that way I can keep everything on one level surface. This is a really common technique. I got my guide up and my blade depth set. I'm going to go and rip this piece out. Alrighty, so I got my 3 1-foot sections cut out. This is the bottom, the back, and the top. Now I need to make my dividers. So I have just a little bit less than a foot piece left over here because this was a 4x8 sheet. What I'm going to do, if my wife can come over here and look at this awesome little diagram. So this is how I'm going to put it together here, and then the dividers will go on the inside. So this back piece is 12 inches tall, and I'm going to butt them together just like this here. So I can just screw these together just like that. But because this is 1.5 inches thick, and this one's an inch, excuse me, this is 3/4 and this is 3/4, my actual inside space will be 10.5 inches. It's a tiny bit smaller than I prefer, but it's okay. This board I ripped down to right at 11 inches, just so I had a solid unit of measurement. And so if that's 10.5 inches actual inside, and that's 11, what I'm gonna do here, it's a little risky, but I'm gonna use this 3/4 straight flute bit. And so this is exactly 3/4 thick. So what I'm gonna do is make grooves in here, kind of like you would a bookshelf or a cabinet. Excuse me. 1/4 inch deep on top and 1/4 inch deep on bottom. And so if you got 11, excuse me, if you get a 10.5 and add 1/4 and 1/4, you get this 11-inch depth. And so that should make it pretty dang strong, because that 3/4 plywood will be inside here all the way down. And I'm gonna go ahead and do them 12 inches wide, like I said. So I'm gonna end up with I believe 7 boxes. So I'm gonna get this all set up on my router here and try to make some straight cuts. Alrighty. So I got my 1 foot lines all marked out and my 3/4 bit installed. I use something from my shop. It's a setup block. I'll leave them in the description. It's more for, you know, more intricate woodworking, but I cheated. So I've got my 1/4 inch exactly, my depth to cut exactly. And then I made all the lines. So if basically I'm gonna cut these at the same time, the whole rabbit. So if they're not exactly, you know, 1 foot, 2 foot, exact, it doesn't matter. One, it's just a nesting box, and then two, as long as this line and this line are straight with each other, then it doesn't matter. I'm still going to use this guide, and what I did is I just put the center of this bit on my 1 foot mark, and then made a mark right here at the end of my base, and the base is what's actually going to be riding along this guide here. So I'm going to clamp this guide down here and make my grooves, and I'll see y'all in a minute. Alrighty, so you can see I got all these grooves cut. It ended up not being too hard. And then, so now I need to do these little things that are going to separate the boxes. So I'm just cutting those out with a skill saw. And then as you can see, they fit in there pretty snug, and it'll line up with the top. So this should end up being pretty dang strong. And I misspoke earlier. I'm going to have 8 boxes. I just confused myself a little bit here, but we're gonna have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 boxes. And just like the back, where I'm just gonna put that piece of plywood against it like this, the same thing's gonna be on the sides. That's why there's no grooves here. I'm just gonna screw it right to itself on the side. So I'll get these cut out, and then we'll get some footage of me gluing and screwing. So I got all my little dividers cut out, and you can see they fit very well. So I need to go ahead and glue and screw these together. How I'm going to do that is I'm going to use that little countersink bit I showed y'all yesterday. And to make life really easy, I'm just going to drill 2 holes where I know the gap is. So I'll just drill those down right quick. And then to get the countersink, Once I get all those drilled, I can already see my holes, so now I can go ahead from this side, put a little countersink, and that way when I screw it in, those screws will still be flush with the wood and they won't crack. I will be using 1.25" number 8 construction screws, and that should be plenty long enough. And like I told you all yesterday, I'm using 3/4 ply because when you put a screw in it, it's thick enough, it'll actually hold pretty well. So I'll do that for the top and bottom on all these. And once I get all those holes drilled, which should only take about 10-15 minutes, I will take just a little bit of wood glue. It's really not necessary, but wood glue is very cheap and it'll make it a little bit stronger. And I'll just put a thin bead, set this board in there, and then drive the screws in from the back side. So I'll give you all a little shot of that once we're done. Love you. Alrighty, so before we go to the next step, I wanted to show y'all how it all fit together. Even without the sides that are back on it, it is overkill strong, to be frank, but it should last a long time. So I've got this last piece of 3/4 ply that I'm about to put on the back, and I'm not going to worry about putting any glue or anything on the back. And I'll probably do a screw every foot and then one in the center. So it should be on there pretty strong. And so all of this was one piece of plywood so far. And you're going to get 8 boxes out of it. The only thing is that I don't have enough wood from the one sheet to close the sides up. So if you want to maybe take 1 box off or 2 boxes off on your design, you'll still up with 6 boxes, but for 1 sheet of ply. So that's pretty nice. And then I also got a piece of scrap 3/4 from another project that I'm going to put on the front like this here. And I got some hinges so I can rock it down. And that's going to let me clean these out very well. So it'll keep the bedding and the eggs in, but then I'll have it so that it can flop down. So I can just take, you know, a small little garden shovel and scrape all the shavings out really quick and easy. Because the whole point of this is for them to be laying eggs either in clean shavings or clean hay. That way when you take the eggs out, they're very clean and they don't have, you know, that much debris or anything like that on there. So I'll go and put the back on and the front on. I've got a spare piece of ply from another project that I'll cut the sides out, and I'll show y'all what that all looks like, and then we need to paint. This is a nesting box. It's a bit overkill, but again, with materials and everything, it's way less than 50 bucks. I was able to put the hinges on this front lip, and that'll let me take whatever tool I'm using, scrape the shavings out really easily. I could probably just use a 5-gallon bucket and just scrape it out. And then when I'm done, pops back in place. It's a done deal. So I'm going to paint it just to make sure it lasts a long time and it looks kind of pretty. Other than that, I'll show you all the final product, and then I'll show you all me installing it, and hopefully some eggs in it here in just a day or two. Alrighty, I got this thing all painted up. I ended up putting about 3 coats of exterior paint on it, paint and primer combo. Should be really, really durable, should last a while. I went ahead and put the hinges on it, so we have an easy way to just clean out the shavings and put it back up. And I'll put a little latch on it to keep it standing up. I haven't put any sort of you know, anti-roosting, anti-perching type angle on it. If the whole point is to keep the eggs clean, if they get on top here and they defecate or whatever, I don't see any way that it would get on the eggs. So I don't really see a need to put it on there yet. If I have an issue, then I'll go ahead and cut a little piece of ply and put an angle on so they can't get on it anymore. But I don't want to have an angle on it without sides and then potentially have spiders and all kinds of stuff making little homes in here. So I think I'd rather have it exposed. Like I said, I let it dry for about 2 days and it's got 3 coats. So even if they do go to the bathroom and stuff on it, it should be pretty easy to keep clean and it shouldn't deteriorate. So now it's all painted, I'm gonna take it to the chicken coop and install it, and we'll see how it works. I took some scrap pieces that were in the burn pile of 2x4s and screwed them to the inside of this edge of the frame. That way I've got a flat surface to mount that to. And then I used some more scrap to make a really crooked little stand just to help support it up off the ground. This will center. All right, and I'll take some of these 2.5-inch screws and screw it to the wall. All right, that works like I hoped it would. And I'll put a couple more in just for good luck. And do one more here. Alrighty. That looks like nesting box, like a nesting box, folks. All right. So now I need to get some shavings and put them in here and see if these hens like it or not. All right, so you see we got 8 nesting boxes. This is kind of sort of a perch for the top, on the top if they want to use it. They either will or won't. But like I said earlier, I don't see any of their droppings getting in here. And then whenever we do need to clean it, we'll lower this out, scrape them down into a bucket, and put that in the compost pile. So that's a couple chicken coop upgrades. Hopefully y'all like it. Hopefully y'all learned something. I'll have a couple affiliate links in the description. If y'all would like, comment, subscribe, and hit the stupid bell. And we'll have some more homesteaded type videos coming out soon. Thank you.